He used to silence dissenters. Now he's the one on trial. The room fell silent as Karoline Leavitt gripped the witness stand. Her eyes, resolute and unwavering, met Elon Musk's. He wasn't just on trial, his entire legacy was. The air in the courtroom crackled with tension, thick as the murmurs of the press corps who scribbled furiously, their pens scratching like claws on paper. Outside, the streets of San Francisco had turned into a war zone of protest. Shouts of justice for the silenced, and down with tyranny, echoed past the glass windows, bouncing off the marble steps of the federal courthouse. The judge's gavel sat on the bench still as if holding its breath. Karoline's voice, low but steady, cut through the noise. This is not just about a man, it's about power, how it's hoarded, how it's weaponized, and how it's finally being called to account. Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of the world. The case had been years in the making. Elon Musk, once a titan of innovation and the unshakable king of Silicon Valley, now faced charges of political targeting, censorship, and systemic corruption. The accusations were grave. That he had used his empire, SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, and the vast network of influence that surrounded him, to suffocate dissent, manipulate public discourse, and remove anyone who dared to oppose him. The trial had become a spectacle, a modern-day reckoning between the old guard of power and the new wave of resistance. But the real drama wasn't just in the charges, it was in the evidence. The courtroom had been transformed into a stage, every inch of it a battleground. The scent of old wood and ink lingered, mingling with the sharp tang of tension. The jury sat rigid, their faces masks of concentration. The prosecution's lead attorney, a steely-eyed woman named Naomi Carter, leaned forward as if to pierce through Musk with her gaze. Across from her, Musk's legal team, slick, well-dressed, and impeccably calm, watched with the detached confidence of men who had never lost. The first piece of evidence was a leaked recording. It had surfaced weeks earlier, buried in the archives of a defunct news outlet, unearthed by a whistleblower who had once worked in Musk's inner circle. The audio was grainy, the voice distorted, but the message was clear. Eliminate the opposition, Musk's voice boomed, cold and calculated. These people are not just critics, they're a threat. Use the algorithms, use the funding. Make sure they disappear. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, murmurs, the rustle of chair legs scraping against the floor. Karoline leaned into the microphone, her fists clenched at her sides. This isn't just a speech. It's a blueprint for control, a blueprint that has been executed for years. The judge's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and authoritative. Order, please, Miss Leavitt, you will present your evidence in full. She nodded, stepping back to allow the next witness to take the stand. The second witness was Daniel Reyes, a former engineer at Tesla who had once been one of Musk's most trusted confidants. He stepped forward with the hesitant gait of a man who had spent years running from his own conscience. I worked for Elon Musk for 6 years, he began, his voice shaking. I believed in the vision, I believed in the mission, but what I saw after the incident with the California Senate, that's when the truth became unbearable. The courtroom leaned in. The incident in question had been a scandal that had shaken the state. A group of progressive lawmakers had introduced a bill aimed at protecting religious freedom, a measure that Musk had publicly endorsed. But when the bill was passed, Musk's companies suddenly began targeting the lawmakers' constituents with algorithmic campaigns, doxing them, flooding social media with threats. Within weeks, several of them had resigned, their careers ruined. And you were involved, Karoline pressed. Daniel nodded. I was part of the team that designed the software. It was called Project Silence. The files, there were directives to suppress any political group that opposed Musk's interests. It wasn't just about opinions, it was about erasing people. A murmur of outrage rippled through the courtroom. You told them to do this? Karoline asked, her voice low. I didn't tell them to do it, Daniel replied, his eyes downcast. I was following orders, but I didn't know the full extent. I thought it was just a way to clean up the noise, to protect the brand. Karoline's jaw tightened. Protect the brand? At what cost? Daniel looked up, his face etched with remorse. The cost of freedom, the cost of democracy. The trial continued, the evidence piling up like a mountain of ash. The next day, the courtroom was filled with a new kind of tension, the weight of inevitability. Karoline had taken the stand herself, her testimony a lightning rod of defiance. I was elected to serve the people, she said, her voice steady. Not to become a pawn in a game of power, and yet I saw it happen. I saw how Musk used his wealth, his influence, his technology to bend the system to his will. He didn't just want to control the conversation, he wanted to control the future. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the courtroom. This isn't just about me. It's about every person who has ever been silenced, every voice that has been drowned out by the roar of corporate greed. You can't jail a man for what he has done. You can't jail a system that profits from the suffering of others. The courtroom was silent. But then a voice cut through the air. Objection, Your Honor, Musk's lawyer said, his tone smooth as oil. The witness is overreaching. This is not a verdict. This is a political diatribe. The judge raised a hand. Miss Leavitt, please remain within the bounds of the facts. Karoline's eyes burned with anger. Your Honor, the facts are clear. Musk's actions have been deliberate, calculated, and criminal. This trial is not just about one man. It's about the moral bankruptcy of a system that allows power to corrupt without consequence. The judge nodded, and the courtroom fell silent once more. The climax came in the form of a final piece of evidence. A sealed envelope handed to the judge by a court clerk. Inside was a document, its contents released only to the jury. It was a memo from Musk's legal team, dated 6 months prior to the trial, outlining a plan to neutralize Karoline Leavitt. The memo detailed how Musk's team had attempted to discredit her through social media campaigns, legal threats, and even attempts to bribe journalists. The language was chilling. She is a thorn in our side. Remove her and the story dies. The courtroom exploded. Karoline stood at the center of it all, her hands trembling as she looked at Musk. You thought you could silence me, you thought you could control the narrative, but here we are. This is the moment you feared. Musk's face was unreadable. This is a farce, he said, his voice cold. You're using this trial to advance your own agenda. Karoline stepped forward, her voice rising. No, this isn't my agenda. It's the people's agenda. And you, she pointed at him, her voice shaking with fury. You've been the enemy of the people for too long, and today we finally look you in the eye. The judge nodded solemnly. The court will reconvene tomorrow. The jury will deliberate. As Karoline stepped down from the stand, the courtroom was alive with emotion. Some in the press corps wept. Others murmured in hushed tones, their phones buzzing with texts sent to the world. Outside, the protest had grown louder, a cacophony of hope and rage. But as Karoline stepped out into the sunlight, she saw something that made her heart sink. A cross, hung on the side of the courthouse, swayed gently in the wind. It was a symbol of faith, of hope, of the people who believed in justice. But Karoline knew the truth. This trial wasn't the end, it was the warning, and there were still many more battles to fight.